Welcome to the Institute of Politics Forum. I'm Laura Liswood, the Secretary General of the Council of Women World Leaders. Reflecting the broad interest that the Honorable Prime Minister generates herself and in the part of the world, we are being co-hosted by the Institute of Politics, the Weatherhead Center Student Council, the Center for International Development, the Women's Leadership Project, the Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs, the South Asian Student Association, and the Institute of Politics Student Advisory Committee. I would like to thank the ambassador from Bangladesh, Ambassador Sheikh and his staff for their helpful cooperation. Bill White and his staff at the Institute of Politics. I would also particularly like to thank our staff at the Council of Women World Leaders, Molly Dietz, the Executive Director, and Nicole O'Reilly, Administrator. I would like to thank the State Minister for Foreign Affairs, Abul Hassan Chaudhry, for his assistance. The Institute of Politics was established in 1966 with the mission to inspire students to enter careers in politics and public service. It is, in fact, the premier forum at Harvard for world leaders. You'll learn more about the Council of Women World Leaders from its chair, but it's always an honor to have a council member come to the Kennedy School of Government, where the council locates its secretariat. In fact, we are triply honored because 3 of our council members are here tonight at the same time, which is quite an unusual event for us. I would like to introduce our chair, a person who I've had the privilege of working with on almost a daily basis, and who always acts as if she's delighted to work with me on a daily basis. The Right Honorable Kim Campbell, who will introduce our guest. Prime Minister Campbell most reflects the true definition of a leader, someone who acts with passion and vision, and with that even more rare commodity of a leader, she has perspective, real ideas, critical thinking, and a sense of humor. She brings out the best in everyone she works with, in fact, everyone she meets. Prime Minister Kim Campbell was educated at the University of British Columbia and the London School of Economics. She's trained as a lawyer and as a political scientist specializing in international politics, and she's held office at 3 levels of government. In January 1989, Kim Campbell was appointed by Prime Minister Brian Mulroney as Minister of State for Indian Affairs and Northern Development. She became the first woman to be named Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada in February 1990. In 1993, the Prime Minister was named Minister of National Defense and Minister of Veteran Affairs, the first woman to hold these positions. In March 1993, after the resignation of Brian Mulroney, Ms. Campbell announced her candidacy for the leadership of the Progressive Conservative Party. She was elected as the first female Prime Minister in June 25, 1993. As she says, democracy is a blunt instrument. Her party held a general election in September of 1993, and after having achieved the highest approval rating for a prime minister in 30 years. The party, however, was defeated in the general election, and in December 1993, the prime minister stepped down as leader of her party. She is very familiar with Harvard, having been a fellow at the Kennedy School of Government, a fellow at the Institute of Politics, and a fellow at the Joan Shorenstein Center on Press and Politics and Public Policy. She is now the Consul General for Canada in Los Angeles, and last year was named by the Council of Women World Leaders to be the chair of the Council of Women World Leaders. The Right Honorable Kim Campbell.
Thank you very much, Laura. And I do enjoy working with Laura on a day-to-day basis because I have the leisure, unlike Sheikh Hasina, I'm no longer in office, so I have the leisure to do that. Last year, a public opinion poll in the United States showed that more than 90% of Americans said that they were willing to vote for a woman as president if she were qualified. But often when people are polled about what they associate with leadership or what qualities they think a president should have in the United States, they define a woman's strength as being empathy and compassion, but men, they say, are probably stronger on acting in times of crisis and taking tough decisions. The purpose of the Council of Women World Leaders, which was formed in 1997, is to dispel that stereotype. Our membership is made up of the now 29 living women who either are or have been president or prime minister of their country. And each of those women is in and of herself a refutation of any assumption that a woman cannot act with decisiveness at a time of crisis or take difficult decisions. And tonight's guest speaker, Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, embodies those values of courage and strength and tenacity, so often not associated with women leaders, absolutely superbly, and you're going to hear from her. Sheikh Hasina is a champion of peace in the domestic arena, in the South Asian region, and in the world at large. Her policy of resolving problems through discussion has led to the 2-decade-long insurgency problem in the Chittagong hill tracts of Bangladesh being resolved through a peace accord. The long-standing Ganges water-sharing dispute with India has also been settled through negotiations at the initiatives of this Prime Minister. She visited the capitals of India and Pakistan after their nuclear tests in 1998 to dissuade their leaders from the nuclear path. This leadership, not only in her own country but on the world stage, has led her to be the recipient of numerous awards, and we're going to hear later at dinner about one of those which she's about to receive this week. But she has been nominated, among other things, for the Nobel Peace Prize. But at the same time, her gender has made a difference because she has also, in her role as Prime Minister, shown strong support for the women and girls of Bangladesh through improving opportunities for education for girls, through microfinancing projects to enable women to create their own businesses. As a result of Sheikh Hasina's efforts, more than 14,000 women have been elected to local government positions in Bangladesh. We talk about leadership very often in the abstract, and this school is devoted to the study of governance and all the things that go into making it possible for governments to act effectively and to make change. And that is why it is such an honor and a privilege to hear firsthand from a great leader who is leading a government in a difficult and beset part of the world, who is leading with courage, and whose experience is both fascinating and an inspiration to all of us. It's a great honor to introduce the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Chair, Right Honorable Kim Campbell, Chair, Council of Women World Leaders, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. আমি এখানে আমাদের বাংলাদেশেরও অনেক মানুষকে দেখতে পাচ্ছি। সবাইকে বাংলাদেশের পক্ষ থেকে আন্তরিক শুভেচ্ছা। আসসালামু আলাইকুম। I have no words to thank Right Honorable Kim Campbell for her kind words. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here today. The ARCO Forum of Public Affairs is a very distinguished forum. Speaking here is a rare honor. It has been suggested that I should speak on leading a country in transition, challenges and opportunities. Transition from what and to where? As far as Bangladesh is concerned, it is, to my mind, a transition from authoritarian rule to democracy, a transition from exploitation of the people to their welfare, a transition from violence and conflict to peace. I shall talk about my own experience and about the challenges we had to face in Bangladesh. Unfortunately, the challenges are yet to be over. That, in our view, makes talking about these all the more worthwhile. In order to explain our situation, I have to go back a little in history. Bangladesh was a part of Pakistan at one time. The first ever general elections in Pakistan were held in 1970. Awami League won majority seats. It means 167 out of 169 seats. Our great leader, father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, my father, led the party. Bangabandhu means friend of Bengal, which he was all his life. A military junta was in power then. The elections were held to constitute a National Assembly. The National Assembly was to frame a new constitution in order to end military rule and transfer power to the representatives of the people. The assembly was summoned to meet in Dhaka. Members from West Pakistan started reaching Dhaka. All on a sudden, the sitting of the assembly was called off. No respect was shown to the verdict of the people. Bangabandhu made a strong protest and called for a non-violent, non-cooperation movement. The entire nation stood behind him, united, and spoke in one voice. The military junta responded by taking repressive measures fast and unleashed a reign of terror in no time, committing genocide. On March 26, 1971, Bangabandhu declared the independence of Bangladesh. He was taken a prisoner the same day. In his message declaring independence, Bangabandhu called upon the people of Bangladesh to resist the occupation army of Pakistan to the last and to expel it from Bangladesh. A war of liberation followed and was fought in the name of Bangabandhu. We won and emerged on the map of the world as a sovereign state after 9 months on December 16, 1971. Bangabandhu is the founding father of our nation. Our problem with Pakistan had begun long back. We were exploited politically, economically, and socially. Religion was the only link between the two wings of Pakistan, separated from each other by more than 1,000 miles of foreign territory. But religion alone cannot be the basis of a democratic state in which different peoples with different cultures and different identities live. The immediate reason for the breaking away of Bangladesh from Pakistan was the denial of the right of the people to rule themselves through their chosen representatives. Respect for democracy and democratic values is at the root of our emergence as an independent nation. Bangabandhu gave us a constitution in 9 months' time after his release from a prison in Pakistan and return home in January 1972. It came into force on 16 December 1972, the day on which we had, a year back, won our war of liberation. Democracy and secularism were two basic principles of the Constitution. Bangladesh was to be a republic and a unitary state. Parliament in Bangladesh is sovereign and unicameral. 300 members of parliament are elected directly. In addition, there are 30 seats kept reserved for women. The directly elected members elect the women members from reserved seats. The women members from the reserved seats have the same status and the same privilege as any other member. Women can also contest from general seats, and some do. I was elected from 3 general seats in the present parliament and had vacated 2. I've always been elected from a general seat. The President appoints as Prime Minister the member of Parliament who appears to him to command the support of the majority of the members of Parliament. The Prime Minister is the head of government, the President the head of the state. The members of Parliament elect the President. The Constitution guarantees the fundamental rights of the people. The President appoints the Chief Justice of Bangladesh and judges of the Supreme Court. The Chief Justice and the judges are independent in the exercise of their judicial functions. Bangabandhu was assassinated on August 15, 1975, along with my mother, my brothers, their newly wed wives, and my youngest brother, who was only a child. This was followed by a long spell of military and authoritarian rule. Coup after coup took place. The country was ruled under martial law, violating the constitution. Chief martial law administrators became presidents with unfettered powers. Intrigue and conspiracy became the order of the day. The spirit of the war of liberation was lost. The rulers made students their tools, giving them arms, drug, and cash. Hardly a night passed without fire being opened, bombs being blasted, and someone losing his life. Terrorism reigned supreme. Day after day, the capital became a dead city at night, with curfew imposed and all movements forbidden. One general, when in power, amended the constitution by issuing martial law proclamations and orders and changed its basic character, dropping, for example, the principle of secularism. Another general suspended the constitution. Each of the military rulers who usurped power needed a stamp of legitimacy on his rule and wanted to have it desperately. So each formed a political party. Each used the state machinery to get in touch with politicians and to lure them away from their own parties and to join his. Some did. A price, of course, had to be paid. The taxpayers' money was spent. A share of power was given peripherally. Politics became corrupted, creating another hurdle in the way of democracy. Sham elections were held. The people were denied their right to choose. Military rulers were returned to power. They claimed to have been democratically elected and to have restored democracy. Awami League believes in constitutional politics. It, therefore, contested the elections. Another purpose was to create public opinion against authoritarian rule. In one instance, when my party was far ahead of the party of the military ruler in the polls, the election commission stopped announcing the results. So did the state television and the state radio. When after about 48 hours or so, television and radio resumed broadcasting the results, the party of military ruler was shown to be winning. This we call media coup. The killers of Bangabandhu were rewarded with diplomatic assignments abroad. More importantly, an ordinance was promulgated protecting them from being tried in a court of law. That was the end of the rule of law, so very crucial to the functioning of a democratic state. If one criminal could escape the due process of law, why not others? In circumstances like this, the state loses the moral right to rule, nor can democracy function. My sister and I were brought on the day on which Bangabandhu was killed. That was how we escaped death. Then began our life in exile for long 6 years, moving from country to country, looking for shelter, stalked by death every moment. Even then, we did not fail in our duty. The duty was to protest, to make people aware of how they have been robbed of their democratic rights, and to create public opinion against military rulers. In 1976, we spoke in Stockholm, in 1980 in London, and we continue to make our voice heard. An international commission was formed to inquire into the murder of Bangabandhu in response to an appeal that I had made. The members of the commission were Sir Thomas Williams, QC MP, Mr. Sean McBride, SC, Mr. Jeffrey Thomas, QC MP, and Mr. Aubrey Rose. The commission met for the first time on September 18, 1998 in the House of Commons in London. And that commission wanted to go to Bangladesh to inquire about the murder. But the then president, the military dictator, Ziaur Rahman, didn't allow them to go to Bangladesh. Eventually, I returned home in May 1981 to a tumultuous ovation from millions of people and took charge of Awami League, then in disarray after the killing of its top leaders in jail by men in power. There was no one in the country to challenge the authoritarian rule, no one to console the people and give them courage. Mine was the first voice of protest here too. And then, over a period of time, hundreds and thousands of voices joined mine. There was massive agitation. A lot of blood was shed. I was fired at too and arrested no less than 5 times. Finally, in the face of public wrath, the authoritarian ruler had to quit. That happened in December 1990. The first task was over, but only the first. The other important task was to restore to the people their right to vote freely and fairly. Stuffing of ballot boxes had to be stopped. Impersonation of voters had to be stopped. Intimidation of election officials and the administration had to be stopped. Violation of conduct rules by candidates had to be stopped. The confidence of the people in the election process had to be restored. We in Awami League proposed that the general elections should be held under a non-party caretaker government. On November 6, 1990, in a public meeting in Dhaka attended by about 70,000 people, I gave the formula for forming the caretaker government within constitutional parameters. On December 6, 1990, a caretaker government was formed on the basis of the formula we had given. Now, it was time for general elections. We wanted the elections to be free and fair. We wanted to restore to the people their right to choose. We mobilized them. It is my vote and I shall cast it, and cast it for whosoever I like. This was the slogan that was heard all over the Bangladesh. My party and I worked day and night to create the right kind of environment for the election. Election results were strange. Awami League polled the highest number of the total votes cast, but got a lesser number of seats in parliament than another party. No party had a majority in parliament. Awami League could have formed the government with support from fundamentalist party and the party of the fallen authoritarian ruler. There are offers too from these. I decided against it and opted for being in the opposition. Another party formed the government with support from the fundamentalist party. Here, a fundamental problem arises. If democracy means rule by people chosen by the majority of the voters exercising their right of franchise, can a government not so chosen be considered to be truly representative of the people? Do election results in such circumstances really reflect the wishes of the people? If they do not, what is the way out? How can it be ensured that such anomalies do not occur in a democratic system? As the leader of the opposition in the newly elected Parliament of 1991, I propose that the presidential form of government be changed into a parliamentary form. We had seen from experience that the authoritarian rulers who had assumed the office of the president were accountable to none. Parliament was no more than a rubber stamp. But a government must be accountable. Parliament must be supreme. There must be checks and balances. Unless accountability is ensured, democracy cannot function. I was successful in my move. The Constitution was amended and the parliamentary form of government introduced. The party that came to power was born at the hands of a military ruler. It was the same military ruler who had rehabilitated in politics persons who had opposed our war of liberation and gave them important positions in government. When this party formed the government in 1991, it refused to repeal the indemnity ordinance which saved the killers of Bangabandhu from being brought to book. That meant that it did not want to restore the rule of law. The government was accountable to Parliament, but for most of the time, Parliament was in session. The Prime Minister was not even present. By-elections were rigged one after another. So were local government elections. Whenever the ruling party lost an election, they took recourse to violence and terrorism. When, for example, it lost the elections of the City Corporation of Dhaka, the capital, to Awami League, 7 workers of Awami League were shot dead in broad daylight at a place in the city called Lal Bagh. Then finally, there was a by-election at a place called Magura, which was more massively rigged than any other. It was physically impossible to cast the number of votes that were cast in favor of the ruling party. The results of the by-election were unacceptable to all, except the party in power. The faith of the people in the fairness of elections was lost again. When the time came for general elections in 1996, all political parties of the country except the party in power and the party which was led by the self-confessed killers of Bangabandhu boycotted it. So did the people. In some polling booths, not even a single voter turned up. Even then, the ruling party was declared the winner. The culture of holding sham elections was back. Democracy is not merely a matter of form. It is a culture, a set of principles and a set of values. It was proved once again that a political party born in the barracks at the hand of a military ruler could not be democratic, even if elected. The culture of democracy is simply beyond such a party. So, back to the streets again. Back to agitation to restore what was restored once, but did not last. I had come up again with the idea of holding general elections under a non-party caretaker government immediately after the massively rigged by-election. When the general elections too were rigged, the people came to realize how important it was to have a non-party caretaker government at the time of general elections. The first caretaker government was technically a continuation of the government that had fallen, but this time it was to be a permanent measure. All general elections in the future were to be held under such government. The Constitution was to provide for it. In the face of agitation, the government that was formed after the sham elections did not last more than 12 days. The Constitution was amended A non-party caretaker government formed and elections held under it. Awami League won and came to power after 21 years. In circumstances like this, democracy needs to be closely watched all the time. It has many enemies, and they are powerful ones. I would like to identify three right now. A, unconstitutional ambitions coupled with muscle power. B, poverty. And C, illiteracy. Some governments were toppled in the past by unconstitutional means. We do not wish such events to occur again. No one should have unconstitutional political ambitions. No one should be encouraged to have these. No one should try to take advantage of the might of some by misleading them. 101 excuses may be found to justify unconstitutional measures taken or proposed to be taken, but these are no more than excuses. The justification of democracy is democracy itself, and nothing can replace it. If a government is bad or not up to the expectation of the people, there must be constitutional means of replacing it. That is, the means that should be adopted, no other. With widespread poverty and illiteracy, it is difficult for democracy to take roots and for democratic values to flourish. On the other hand, poverty and illiteracy will continue to be there if there is no democracy. We are caught in a vicious circle. We will, God willing, come out of it. We must. We have already been able, by the grace of Allah, to raise the literacy rate to 60%. We hope to be able to remove illiteracy within the next few years. Enrollment of girls in school has gone up remarkably. We have given education the highest allocation in our budget. Poverty cannot be removed without education, and doing away with poverty is our first priority. The economy has grown at a rate of 5% or more in the last 3 years. It is expected to be 6% or more next year. Per capita income has gone up by 28% this year and has reached to the level of US $386. The number of people living below the poverty line has gone down from 47 to 44. We know poverty cannot be contained unless population explosion is checked. We run a highly successful Planned Parenthood program and have been able to bring down the population growth rate to 1.5%. We have integrated the Planned Parenthood program with healthcare and family welfare measures. In order to attain self-sufficiency in food, we have taken planned steps in the agriculture sector. There have been bumper crops in the last 3 years, and we hope we would have the same this year too. We have undertaken income generation programs for the poor in the rural areas with an eye especially on the poorest of the poor. The government's microcredit programs have been a great success, with a recovery rate of 98% or more and a much lower interest rate than other programs of the same kind, covering more than 88,000 villages, which is a much larger area than that covered by any other comparable program in the private sector. Following the worst ever floods in our history in 1998, we have sustained more than 20 million people for no less than 9 months by providing them free food without any instance of maldistribution or corruption. We have set up an employment generation bank for the youth and arranged for their training on a wider scale. We have created a fund of US $25 million for generating employment for the poor. We have introduced pension schemes for the aged and for women who have lost their husbands or have been deserted by them. More than 650,000 persons are the beneficiaries. We are setting up in various parts of the country homes for elderly people with no one to look after them. We call these Shanti Nibas, abode of peace. We are going to have both elderly people and children without parents in these homes. The idea is to give the orphans affection of the elders, which they miss, and the elders the company of the children. Houses are being built for rehabilitating people living in slums in the cities. The project called Model Village creates employment opportunities in rural areas in order to stop migration from rural to urban areas. Nearly 50,000 landless families have already been rehabilitated under the program. A return home project has been undertaken to bring back people from urban to rural areas. I personally run a housing program for the homeless called Ashrayam. It does not only provide shelter to the poor, but also takes care of generation of income. The program will provide shelter to 50,000 families, each having at least 5 members on an average. More than 16,000 families have already been given home. The number would go up in the future. These are all measures taken for the first time in our history. We are determined to banish poverty. We are determined to reach its benefits to everyone. We in Awami believe in social justice, and we know that it is only through democracy that this can be attained. Women are nearly a half of the total population of Bangladesh. This demographic feature has a special implication for democracy. Democracy cannot work leaving a half of the population out. We have, therefore, taken special measures to empower women. Our aim is to empower them not only socially and economically, but also politically. The lowest tier of local government is Union Parishad. A union is made of a few villages. Villagers elect the members of the Union Parishad. There are 11 members in each. We have made provisions for keeping 3 seats reserved for women. Women can contest in other seats too. There are now around 14,000 women members in Union Parishads. This is for the first time that this has happened. This will, we believe, create awareness among women of democratic values and democratic culture, preparing them for greater roles to play in the future. These elected women are already actively participating in developmental activities and making valuable contributions to these. We have also taken measures to extend the period for which seats would be kept reserved for women in Parliament. That would call for an amendment of the Constitution which cannot be made unless the opposition cooperates, since Awami League does not have two-thirds seats in Parliament. We believe in transparency and accountability. We have introduced parliamentary reforms to ensure that the standing committees on ministries are no longer chaired by the concerned ministers, but by other MPs. The entire debate in Parliament is broadcast direct so that the people instantaneously get to know what is happening there and form their views without going through an intermediary. The Prime Minister's question hour has been introduced. For the first time, not only in Bangladesh but also in the whole of our region, strengthening Parliament is one of our basic commitments. There is one more reason why democracy is important for us. This is peace. We are fully committed to it. By peace, we do not mean a mere absence of a state of war or of conflicts. Peace is the blissful state in which all people can lead a worthwhile and meaningful life in accordance with their own choice, their talents and ability flourishing unhindered. We have ratified comprehensive test ban treaty, and we are so far the only one in our region to do so. We have supported the establishment of an international criminal court. Earlier, we peacefully resolved our long-standing dispute with India over the sharing of the waters of the Ganges. We have brought the ethnic conflict in Chittagong Hill Tracts, which had lasted for more than 2 decades, claimed thousands of lives and rendered thousands homeless, to an end and established peace there. The former insurgents have all surrendered their arms. Those who had gone across the border in search of security, leading the pitiable life of refugees, have all returned. And we reached the peace accord all by ourselves, without any external help or mediation. I do not know of any other instance in recent history where such things have happened. We worked for diffusion of tension in South Asia following nuclear tests by India and Pakistan. We have played a key role in UNESCO and the UN for promoting culture of peace. We have introduced peace education in our country and have appealed to all heads of governments to do so in their respective countries. We have moved a resolution in the NAM Summit, Non-Aligned Movement Summit, on poor countries' right to development. As the next chair of the NAM, we hope to pursue it vigorously. We organized the first ever conference of Asian parliamentarians for peace and cooperation. A new organization, Association of Asian Parliaments for Peace, was born out of it. I was elected its first president. It was a great honor for me and for my people. All this was possible because of our faith in democracy. It is only the people who can bring about and sustain peace. It is only democracy that can reflect the wishes of the people. Ladies and gentlemen, I can assure you that we in Bangladesh shall continue to do our very best to do away with all that stand in the way of democracy and peace. But that, as I'm sure you will agree with me, is not an easy task. Thank you very much. Thank you. Joy Bangla. Joy Bangabandhu. Long live democracy. Long live peace. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much, Sheikh Hasina. Ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister has agreed to take some questions from the audience. There are 4 microphones, 2 down here and 2 up there. I can't see all that well, but I've been promised some help for seeing. There's one, and the other one is over here. May I ask you, as a courtesy to our speaker, always to introduce yourself before you ask a question, and to make your questions, not comments. Her Excellency will be happy to answer your questions, which we'll turn first to this microphone.
Assalamu alaikum, Prime Minister. My name is Zayed Yassin. I'm a student here at the college. In this country, there's been a lot of debate recently on the subject of genetically engineered food crops. Some believe that this genetically engineered frankenfood is dangerous, irresponsible, and unnatural, while others believe that these super crops have the ability to provide abundant and cheap food in places where it is needed most. Many consider this issue to be especially relevant to developing countries like Bangladesh, where food security is such an important issue. I was wondering what your feelings were and the policy of the government of Bangladesh was on the subject.
I'm speaking in Bangla, he will translate it on, okay? আসলে বাংলাদেশে এখনো আমরা ঠিক এই ধরনের আমাদের খাদ্য শস্য এখনো আমরা যেটা নিচ্ছি সেটা হচ্ছে খুব ন্যাচারাল জিনিস আমরা ঠিক ওইভাবে এই জাতীয় খাদ্য উৎপাদন এখন আমরা শুরু করি নাই তাই না আমরা তবে ফুড সিকিউরিটি আমরা বাড়াচ্ছি এবং আমাদের অবশ্যই ফুড সিকিউরিটি বাড়াতে হবে কারণ যেহেতু আমাদের পপুলেশন বাড়ছে পপুলেশনের সঙ্গে সঙ্গে ফুড সিকিউরিটি বাড়ানো প্রয়োজন সেদিকে আমরা মানুষের স্বাস্থ্যের দিকে নজর রেখে সব দিকে নজর রেখে আমরা ফুড সিকিউরিটি বাড়ানোর চেষ্টা করছি
Naturally, we are concerned with increasing the production of food, particularly so because with the rise of population, this is very much important. But at this juncture, of course, our food production is natural, and the factors that you have suggested, like genetic food production, we have not gone into it up to now. But we share the views that you have expressed, and we are very concerned for the health of our people.
Assalamu alaikum. Your Excellency, Sheikh Hasina. My name is Bashir Ahmed. I work for the U.S. Department of Commerce. I'm here in the John F. Kennedy School of Government as a senior executive fellow. I'm attending a 4-week class. Okay. I have a couple of questions for you. I'll ask you in English. You can answer in Bengali. It's fine with me.
No, my translator is here.
Okay.
No problem.
Yeah. Okay, the first question. Well, you are the...
One question.
One question? Okay, just I'll ask one question. You are the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, and you have another identification. You are a daughter of the father of the nation. People will remember the father of the nation for his great leadership, his sacrifice, and because he is the father of the nation. How people will remember you? I know you told us here, you are working hard to restore democracy, to bring law and order, to working for the economic growth, literacy improvement, housing, all these things. Can you identify or can you tell me one or two things what you have done or you are still doing that you can say these are concrete, these are sustainable, these you can claim as your legacy?
প্রথম হচ্ছে যে আমাকে পিপুল মনে রাখবে কি রাখবে না সেটা নিয়ে আমি খুব চিন্তিত না বা সেই চিন্তা মাথায় নিয়ে আমি কাজ করি না। আমি কাজ করি জনগণের জন্য। আমি কাজ করি মানুষের মঙ্গল কিসে হবে, মানুষ শান্তিতে বসবাস করতে পারবে, নিরাপদে চলতে পারবে, তার জীবনের ন্যূনতম চাহিদা মেটাতে পারবে এবং মানুষ ভালোভাবে চলবে। বিশেষ করে আমার দেশের মানুষ তাদের জীবন উন্নত হবে, সেটাই আমার লক্ষ্য। সেই লক্ষ্য নিয়ে আমি কাজ করে যাচ্ছি।
Can I ask you a follow-up question on this?
I think let the minister translate it. Yeah.
First, I would like to assure you that I do not lose any sleep over whether or not I am remembered by the people of our country. I am more fundamentally focused in bringing about a good living condition for the people of Bangladesh so that they live in peace and prosperity, they live in stable conditions, and we bring about substantial changes in the life of the people of the country.
তার জীবনের যে মিনিমাম রিকোয়ারমেন্ট সেটা যেন ফুলফিল হয় এবং সেজন্য একটু ডেভেলপ উন্নত জীবন পেতে।
It is also, I feel, our obligation to see that the basic needs of the people are met and their aspirations are not impaired by conditions prevalent in the country.
আমি বোধহয় একমাত্র সরকার প্রধান যে সরকারে আসার পর, কারণ আমি অতীতে দেখেছি যে কেউ ক্ষমতায় আসলেই নিজের নাম প্রচারে ফটো প্রচারে ব্যস্ত হয়ে পড়ে। তা আমি বোধহয় একমাত্র সরকার প্রধান যে আমার ছবি কোথাও অফিসিয়ালি আমি লাগাতেও বলিনি। কাজে আমার বিষয়ে কেউ চিন্তা করুক বা যা ওটা আমার দরকার নেই বা আমি প্রয়োজন মনে করি না, কিন্তু আমি জনগণের জন্য কাজ করে যেতে চাই।
Probably I am the only head of the government in Bangladesh who have not had a major preoccupation to see his photograph or her photograph in this instance to be placed on government and other important buildings. I would like to dedicate myself for the welfare of the people and work for their own protection and security.
তবে এই 3 বছরে অন্তত আমরা এইটুকু করতে পেরেছি যে আমাদের যেমন খাদ্য উৎপাদন বৃদ্ধি পেয়েছে, জনগণের ভোটের অধিকার জনগণের হাতে ফিরিয়ে দিতে পেরেছি, অর্থনীতি উন্নয়নের দিকে যাচ্ছে, অন্তত মানুষ ভবিষ্যতে একটা সুন্দর জীবনের স্বপ্ন দেখতে শুরু করেছে এবং দেশে যে সমস্ত সমস্যা ছিল যেমন পার্বত্য চট্টগ্রাম সমস্যা, গঙ্গা পানি সমস্যা ইত্যাদি সমস্যাগুলি আমরা দূর করতে সক্ষম হয়েছি এবং দেশ একটা সুষ্ঠু নীতিমালার ভিত্তিতে চলুক সেইটুকু করতে আমরা সক্ষম হয়েছি মাত্র এই 3.5 বছরে, 3 বছর 9 মাসে।
In these 3 and 9 months that we have been in power, we have at least succeeded to increase the food supply, bring about a greater economic circumstances for the people, also bring about a stable and peaceful condition, as I have referred to the Chittagong Hill Tracts, and more importantly, bring back the voting right to the people where they feel that they have a stake in the governance of the country.
Prime Minister, I think maybe I could ask some other questions. You can see there's a huge crowd. You won't be able to get everybody.
Yes. Hi, my name is David Simpson of Boston, and I have a question for the Prime Minister. Are you following the current U.S. presidential election races? And if you are, do you like Al Gore or George Bush?
আমেরিকা হচ্ছে একটা গণতন্ত্রের দেশ এবং দীর্ঘদিন থেকে এখানে গণতন্ত্র চর্চা হয়ে যাচ্ছে। কাজে আমেরিকার প্রেসিডেন্ট কে হবে সেটা আমেরিকার জনগণই সিদ্ধান্ত নেবে এবং তারা ভোট দেবে।
The United States of America is a country of long democratic tradition, and democracy has been practiced here uninterrupted for many years. Who the president of the US of A will be decided by the people under a democratic system by the Americans.
তবে যে জিতবে আমরা তাকে সাপোর্ট করব।
But whoever wins will have our support and our friendship.
Hi, my name's Kyle Hawkins. I'm a sophomore at the college. I'm curious about higher education in Bangladesh. I know that Dhaka University was often referred to as the Harvard of the East in the days of the British colonialists, and I'm wondering what the state of it is today and what your government is doing about higher education.
আচ্ছা, আমরা মানে হায়ার এডুকেশনের জন্য আমাদের ইউনিভার্সিটিগুলি যেহেতু আর একটু মানে শিক্ষা ব্যবস্থাটাকে আরও আধুনিকীকরণ করার জন্য ইতিমধ্যেই আমরা যথেষ্ট কর্মসূচি হাতে নিয়েছি এবং যাতে শিক্ষার মান উন্নত হয়, শিক্ষার সুন্দর পরিবেশ থাকে, আমরা সে ব্যাপারে যথেষ্ট ব্যবস্থা নিয়েছি এবং আমাদের ছেলেমেয়েরা যাতে নতুন নতুন প্রযুক্তিতে শিক্ষা গ্রহণ করতে পারে সেই পদক্ষেপ আমাদের সরকার গ্রহণ করেছে।
For higher education, of course, we have tried in these 3 years and a few months to modernize the education system, bring about a reorientation, to bring them in line with the new developments that are taking place, and also acquaint them, the students of the universities and higher education, with new technologies so that they can be at par with people and students of other universities.
সেই সঙ্গে সঙ্গে আমরা সারা দেশে 12টা বিজ্ঞান ও প্রযুক্তি বিশ্ববিদ্যালয় প্রতিষ্ঠা করছি যাতে নতুন প্রযুক্তির সাথে আমাদের ছেলেমেয়েরা দ্রুত পরিচিত হতে পারে।
Alongside these improvements with the existing universities, we are also setting up 12 science and technology universities in the country so that our boys and girls can become acquainted with science and technology subjects and they can get advantage of this.
যদি আমরা অনেক পিছনে পড়েছিলাম, হয়তো আপনারা শুনলে অবাক হবেন যে আমাদের দেশে এই কম্পিউটারের সঙ্গে আমাদের অনেক ছেলেমেয়েরা পরিচিতই ছিল না, কারণ কম্পিউটার অতি মূল্যবান একটা বস্তু ছিল যার দাম এত বেশি ছিল যে আমাদের দেশের সাধারণ পরিবার এই কম্পিউটারের সঙ্গে পরিচয় হওয়া বা চিনতে জানতেই পারতো না। আমরা সরকার গঠন করার পর থেকে কম্পিউটারের উপর থেকে সম্পূর্ণভাবে ট্যাক্স তুলে দিয়েছি এবং এই কম্পিউটার আরও বেশি যাতে পরিচিতি লাভ করতে পারে, প্রতিটি স্কুল কলেজে পর্যন্ত এই কম্পিউটার পৌঁছে দেওয়ার জন্য আমরা ইতিমধ্যে পদক্ষেপ নিয়েছি, শিক্ষকদেরও প্রশিক্ষণ দিচ্ছি এবং কম্পিউটারকে আরও কার্যকর করে তার মাধ্যমে শুধু আমার দেশে না সারা বিশ্বের সাথে আমাদের ছাত্রছাত্রীরা যাতে সংযোগ করতে পারে তার জন্য ইতিমধ্যেই আমরা অনেকগুলি বাস্তবমুখী পদক্ষেপ গ্রহণ করেছি।
You will perhaps be surprised to know that our students were not exposed to computer science and computer-related subjects. In these 3 years, we have tried not only at the universities, but also at lower levels and higher schools and schools to introduce computer curriculum for them. And in the last budget, we have totally removed any tax on computers to make it popular and make it easily and cheaper and easily available to the students of Bangladesh.
Excuse me, can I ask a related question on that?
Yeah.
Well, we have time for two quick questions, and I think I should observe the people who are...
Can I be the second one?
Well, no, I'm sorry, because people have been standing at the microphone. Perhaps I could ask you to each ask your question so that the Prime Minister can deal with both of them, so we'll conclude in a timely way.
Assalamu alaikum, Prime Minister. My name is Fahim Ahmed. I'm a senior at Harvard College. And you talked about democracy, but one aspect of democracy that is somewhat missing in Bangladesh over the last decade has been that of a consistent, loyal opposition, as the principal parties seem unable to engage in a continuing dialogue over policy. Do you see this trend continuing, or do you think that the political parties will be able to reach out and cooperate in the interest of the welfare of the people of Bangladesh?
Perhaps I can also just ask this gentleman to ask his question, and then the Prime Minister can
Sure.
answer.
একটা কথা মনে রাখতে হবে, যেটা আমার বক্তৃতায় আমি বলেছি, পার্টি তার গঠন, তার আইডিওলজি, তার সাইকোলজি কি, তার উপরেও নির্ভর করে যে পার্টিগুলি কিভাবে একে অপরের সাথে মিলে কাজ করতে পারে। বলেছি
We have to remember the organization, the philosophy, the determinants of a particular political party, which will also decide how we cooperate with that particular political party.
একটা সমস্যায় আমরা ভুগি সবসময়, যেমন আমার পার্টি আওয়ামী লীগ, আমরা 50 বছর পূর্তি করেছি এবং গণতন্ত্রের মধ্য দিয়ে এই সংগঠন গড়ে উঠেছে। আর আমার মেইন দুটি অপোজিশন পার্টি, দুটেই কোনো মিলিটারি ডিক্টেটরের হাতে তৈরি করা, কাজে তারা কোনো ডেমোক্রেটিক প্রসেসের মধ্য দিয়ে আসেনি বলে ঠিক ডায়ালগের মাধ্যমে বা পার্লামেন্টে অংশগ্রহণের মাধ্যমে গণতন্ত্র চর্চা করা, এটা সম্পর্কে তাদের অনীহা তীব্রভাবে দেখা যায়।
We have to perennially contend with one important fact, which is that our party, and recently we celebrated the 50th anniversary, is a totally democratic party, whilst the two other parties which are in contention in Bangladesh have been born out of the cantonments, and therefore there is not a culture of conflict, but a conflict of cultures with us and the other two political parties.
তবুও আমি চেষ্টা করি সবসময় আলাপ আলোচনার মাধ্যমে যে কোনো সমস্যার সমাধান করতে। যেমন আমি নিজে 3 বার আমাদের লিডার অফ দ্য অপোজিশন পার্লামেন্টে তাকে টেলিফোন করেছি, হটলাইনে অর্থাৎ আমাদের রেড ফোনে এবং সরাসরি, কিন্তু তিনি একটি বারের জন্য টেলিফোন ধরেননি বা কথা বলেননি, বা যখনই আলোচনার কথা বলি তিনি বলে দেন যে আলোচনার দরকার নেই। আবার তা আবার কী হচ্ছে, আমি পত্রিকায় দেখলাম, হেডলাইন পড়লাম যে লিডার অফ দ্য অপোজিশন ডায়ালগের জন্য রেডি, শুনে আমি ফোন করলাম, উনি ফোন ধরলেন না।
Even then, we have not merely preached dialogue, I have gone out of my way to practice it. On 3 occasions, I have used the red line, which is a direct link between me and the leader of the opposition, to try to talk to her to break the impasse. But unfortunately, on all these 3 occasions, she did not respond to my phone call.
আমি ফোন করতে মানে উৎসাহী হয়েছিলাম, কারণ আমি খবরের কাগজে দেখলাম যে তিনি ডায়ালগ করতে রেডি, এই কথা দেখে আমি তাকে ফোন করলাম, কিন্তু তিনি ফোন ধরলেন না।
Whilst there was news in the media that she would be interested to continue some discussions, I also feel encouraged to talk to her directly. But unfortunately, my initiative has gone unresponded.
তবু আমি আশা করি যে গণতন্ত্র হচ্ছে একটা চর্চার বিষয়, ধীরে ধীরে চর্চার মধ্য দিয়ে তারাও গণতন্ত্রের মূল্যটা একদিন উপলব্ধি করবে এবং রাজনৈতিক যে কোনো সমস্যা আলোচনার মধ্য দিয়ে সমাধান করবে।
Even then, I hope that we would gradually nurture a culture of democracy which it takes time, and they will realize in course of time that it is through discussion, it is through participation, it is through dialogue, it is through interaction that we can resolve our problems. That I earnestly and fervently hope.
একটা কথা মনে রাখতে হবে যে 15th August 1975 জাতির জনক শাহাদাত বরণ করার পর থেকে বাংলাদেশে যতগুলি সরকার এসেছে, 96 সালের 12 জুনের নির্বাচনের পূর্ব পর্যন্ত প্রতিটি সরকার এবং ক্ষমতা ছিল ক্যান্টনমেন্টের ভিতরে। আমার সরকার অর্থাৎ 96 ইলেকশনের মধ্য দিয়ে যে আওয়ামী লীগ সরকার গঠন করলো, আমরাই এই প্রায় 2 দশক পর ক্যান্টনমেন্টের বাইরে অর্থাৎ সিভিল সোসাইটি থেকেই সরকার গঠন করেছি। এই কথাটা খুব গভীরভাবে উপলব্ধি করা উচিত।
We have to appreciate, in fact, very deeply realize that since the assassination of the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, on the 15th August 1975, for more than 2 decades, people who occupied positions of power and governed the country had not come with the mandate of the people. In fact, they had come out of the cantonments. And therefore, it will take time perhaps to get back into the democratic process, and we have to understand this situation.
আমার গভর্নমেন্ট হচ্ছে প্রথম আউটসাইড ক্যান্টনমেন্ট।
Since the assassination of the father of the nation on the 15th August 75, more than 2 decades later, my government is the first government which is outside of the cantonment, elected by popular vote.
We have time for one more question.
Could we have one question from a woman to a woman? We've not had any questions.
Yeah, oh, that's very good. No, but
This microphone, perhaps we could invite her to come forward and ask a question. Please come forward to the microphone.
Okay, let me just ask my question.
I have a question
One more
here.
question, so maybe we'll ask this young woman to, she's quite right, we haven't had anyone.
I'm so privileged to have the chance to ask the last question. And my name is Yili Huazhe. I'm from Beijing, China. Right now, I'm a visiting scholar of Harvard University. And my question, I think it's a simple one for you, maybe. As a woman prime minister in the developing country, what's the most formidable challenge you have encountered in your governance and politics? And what's your suggestion for the future potential women leaders, particularly those women leaders in the developing country? Thank you.
বলতে হবে যে আমি এটা ঠিকই যে একজন মহিলা প্রধানমন্ত্রী হিসেবে আজকে এখানে উপস্থিত এবং আমার সঙ্গে আরও 2 জন ফর্মার প্রাইম মিনিস্টার এখানে আছেন। তবে এটা ঠিক যে মহিলারা পলিটিক্সে যতটা আসা প্রয়োজন, যতটা আসা উচিত, ঠিক ততটা আসছে না। কিন্তু আমরা চাই যে আরও মহিলারা আসবে। তবে এটা আমাদের একটা চ্যালেঞ্জ। তবে আমি আমার দেশের কাজ, দেশ পরিচালনায় আমি যখন নিয়োজিত, তখন অবশ্য আমি মহিলা কি আমি পুরুষ সেটা আমার কাছে সবথেকে বড় বিবেচ্য বিষয় নয়। বিবেচ্য বিষয় হচ্ছে আমার উপর দায়িত্ব, আমি জনগণের ভোটে নির্বাচিত সরকার, দেশ আমাকে পরিচালনা করতে হবে। কাজে যে কোনো চ্যালেঞ্জ মোকাবেলা করার মতো সাহস নিয়েই আমাকে রাষ্ট্র পরিচালনা করতে হচ্ছে।
As I stand before you as a women Prime Minister of Bangladesh, I am naturally also delighted to have the company of 2 former Prime Ministers who are also women. In the governance of Bangladesh, in working towards to our goals, obviously I have taken it as a challenge, and I am not overwhelmed by the concern that I am a woman. I consider that we have to break barriers and uplift the country, and therefore we have to all work together. However, it is undeniable that the women have a handicap and they have a long way to go. But I think that if we provide the correct leadership and bring about the changes and the transformation of society, this can also be easily achieved.
Prime Minister, it's very clear we could be here till midnight because your thoughtful presentation has provoked many wonderful and excellent questions. I think for those of us who live in mature democracies, your story reminds us, because many of us are some distance from the struggles that formed our societies, but it reminds us of those struggles, and it reminds us that democracy is a work in progress and that we must continue constantly to protect its freedoms. I was delighted when you mentioned that you've introduced Prime Minister's questions into your Parliament. In Canada, we regard question period as our national blood sport, and I'm sure you will enjoy it very much as well. But it is also one of the great examples of democratic accountability. And it's very clear from these questions that you are not only a fine political leader, you are also a great diplomat. I would like to say also that in answer to that last question, I think you are the answer, that young women in developing countries need to look at role models, to understand that it is not easy to become a leader, and your story is perhaps more tragic and full of personal loss than that of many leaders around the world. But you are an example of courage, and as I say, you are the refutation of any stereotype or presumption that someone might make about a woman's capacity to lead. You are a great leader, a great woman, a great example, and a great inspiration. And I know everyone would like to join again in thanking you for being here today. You've honored us. Thank you. I think you can come right now and people will want to